Hey guys, welcome back to the Goodfellow Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Barone. Thanks for tuning in. Today I got a special guest. I got Robert Borelli, Gambino associate for many years, in and out of prison most of his life, and then turned around and gave his life to God. You're going to really enjoy this episode. So if you do, please like and subscribe. Don't forget about the Patreon channel. Check out our shop. And don't forget to send any of your questions to Ask Joe. But without further ado, I'd like to go forward and introduce Robert Borelli. Thanks. Hey, welcome, Robert Borelli. It's my pleasure to meet you. I've heard about a few things about you, but I'd like for you to fill my audience in on where you come from, how'd you get involved into the life, what made you change, and those kind of just those kind of things, if you don't mind starting.
Okay, well, first, let me say thank you for allowing me to be on your show. I
My
consider it
pleasure.
a privilege to be doing this here, and because I love sharing my testimony about where I came from, where I was, who I was, and where I am today, and what I do today. So,
That's what I want to hear. Thank you. It's our
yeah,
pleasure for me.
yes, well, thank you. Born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. Okay, pretty rough neighborhood. I try to identify it with other people. Maybe they could understand it. Three types of people as I was growing up in the neighborhood. And one would be, of course, my family, my mom and dad, having, let me shut this phone off before I go any further. Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Uh, Growing up, there was five children in the family, hardworking people, had a lot of times troubles having ends meet, supporting us kids and stuff like that. So some of the arguments in the home would be, financial arguments. We don't have enough money for this, we don't have enough money for that, whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so at an early age, it's not like say, okay, I want to be like my dad and have these struggles in life. So I didn't look at that. I love my dad, but I didn't want to be like my dad and have that kind of a life myself growing up or for my children when I did grow up.
Right.
And then you had guys that were a little bit older than me, got drafted into the Vietnam War, came back, and they were kind of like strung out, either with drugs, drinking, and all that kind of stuff. So I didn't want to be like the guys that were a little bit older than me coming back from the Vietnam War. And then down the block from where I lived, there was a storefront, which we considered a social club. And
Okay.
that hung out in the social club. And, my neighborhood was very, I guess we could use the term racial. We didn't use it back then. At least I didn't understand racial. I just understood like you stood with your own kind, that kind
Of
of thing.
course.
So we had our boundaries where what neighborhood you could go into. You had blacks in one neighborhood, Hispanics in the neighborhood, Italians and maybe Germans and Irish in another neighborhood, Jewish in
Mm-hmm.
another. That's just how it was. So I'm just trying to paint the picture as clear as I possibly can for people to understand. So in that neighborhood, we had gangs. People hung out on street corners, and so
Mm-hmm.
I hung out on Fulton and Rockaway, and we were called the F&R gang. And then you had
Mm-hmm.
from Eastern Parkway, and they were called the Eastern Parkway gang. So that's how it was.
Right.
Now, my in my neighborhood, the public school was right behind my house, and the Catholic school that I went to was in a black neighborhood. So as we would cross paths, like a lot of the blacks and the Hispanics went to the public school, and we were going to Catholic school.
Mm-hmm.
We would cross paths, and a lot of times it was just fights and stuff like that, just racial fights.
Yeah, it couldn't be helped. Yeah.
Exactly. There was a movie called The Warriors that was made, I think it was in the 80s or something. It kind of depicted a little bit. Of course, it was glorified through Hollywood, but that's kind of how it was. So if you went
No.
into somebody's neighborhood, you knew you were going to get in trouble. So I
Yeah.
was a fighter kind of kid. I was a smaller guy. I didn't want to get picked on. We didn't use the term bully. We just said, I don't want nobody picking on me. So if somebody picked on me, I would do whatever it took to make sure that they didn't want to do it again. And
Yeah. I don't blame you.
that was two extremes that I went with it. But the guys down the block would see that in me, and they kind of took a liking to me.
Mm-hmm.
So let me start hanging out in the club a little bit, and I shoot pool with them. And every now and then there might be a card game in the back of the club, and I serve a sandwich or something like that, make a couple of dollars. But the thing that impressed me the most about these guys was first, they all had cars. Well, most of
Right.
them had. And in my neighborhood, there's not too many people that owned a car.
Mm-hmm.
And then you also had the guys that would really dress nice. They had money in their pocket. And that's kind of that's what I would like for myself, you know. So
Right.
I started hanging out in the club and they let me hang out there. And then little by little, I would do certain things for them, run errands for them, sell fireworks, you know, just to make a couple of dollars for myself. But the thing that impressed me most is they got all the respect from everybody in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
protected the neighborhood. So if something went wrong in my neighborhood or something like that, these guys would make sure that whoever started the trouble didn't come back to start more trouble. Sort of
Mm-hmm.
put it that way. And that's just what it is. So I really, they became kind of like, in a sense, my family because I started hanging out with them more than, staying home.
Sure.
So
And
that's
and
how I
then,
got caught up.
and didn't these guys always seem like they were never worried about anything? They always seemed like they were calm, they were relaxed. They didn't never seem like they had a worry in the world. You know what I mean?
It did appear that way anyway.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, we don't know what they were thinking, but
I mean, like they were having fun, you know. These older guys, they're shooting pool, having card games, telling jokes, laughing. I mean,
yeah.
that's the way it was. So you didn't like when I went home. We seemed, a little. It was a little rough at home. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
sure.
You know,
Yeah,
where
absolutely.
where, where it seemed like these guys were just enjoying life, and we were and my family was struggling through life. So I gravitated to that at an early age, probably about maybe the age of 13, 14 years old.
That so who was one of the guys that was because I think you were involved with the Gambino guys, right?
Yes, yes,
So
yes.
did one of them really like more or less take you under his wing, or how did that go for you?
Well, first it was because Gene Gotti and my sister were good friends, and when I was younger, they hung out on Fulton and Rockaway too. So
Okay.
they would stay there and hang out on the stoop. So I knew about Gene Gotti. He was a pretty tough guy. And once again, it was gangs, and you would see gang fights in my neighborhood, and even on
Right.
my street block with blacks and Hispanics and the white guys. So you would see that there. So Jeannie would be the first one that would come to my mind. And
Hmm.
he didn't hang out in the club where I was, but he would come by every now and then. So I was
Hmm.
very impressed with Gene Gotti in the beginning.
Right. Right. So now you started hanging out, whatever, doing a. I guess you started committing a couple of crimes, right?
Well, I mean, that was part of, everything I was doing. I mean, the card games were legal. We weren't paying taxes if you want the money.
Yeah.
Doing number runs and stuff like that. So that back in them days, none of that was legal. It is today. What
Right.
the state does that there, but back then that wasn't legal. Horse bets or whatever it was, sports,
Hmm.
whatever it was, it wasn't
Yeah. Take the
legalized.
numbers. Hmm.
So I did those things, and then there was some fights where actually at an early age, I think it was about maybe 14 years old, I got locked up for making Molotov cocktail bombs. And
Oh.
back in them days, they didn't lock you up. Like they would bring you to the precinct, your family would have to come and get you.
Right.
But they didn't
Right.
put you in cages and stuff like that. And then you would go to family court. And that happened to me a couple of times for the ages of 14 and I guess maybe 16 years old, where I had a couple of cases. One was for beating up somebody, and I had to go to family court. But those cases got dismissed, and nothing
Yeah.
really happened to me. And then
That's the way.
the club
Right.
closed down a little bit on Fulton Street,
Okay.
and a lot of them moved out. Like Gene Gotti I think him and his brother had the club in Ozone Park,
Hmm.
101st Avenue, and he brought me there a couple of times. But I didn't see Jeannie much after that there. Then I started hanging out on Eastern Parkway a little bit. And then my family moved out of the neighborhood to East New York. And then I started hanging out in Queens, Ozone Park, Queens.
So when do you think it was when you took your first pinch? What was it for? You think the way you took your serious pinch instead of the other ones like he's talking about?
Well, in 1971, I started hanging out on I think it was 93rd Street, 101st Avenue. And I started hanging out with Fat Andy Ruggiano.
Oh, okay.
He was one of the big wise guys in the neighborhood.
Hmm.
Talking about before other people got straightened out. He was like one of the last guys to get straightened back out back in the 50s, and they closed the books at that point in time until I think mid 70s when they opened it up again. But anyway, I was just trying to
No, I
give you.
remember. You're right. Yeah,
So he was like Fat Andy, everybody knew him. You know what I mean? So I was hanging out with his son, and then his father would have a spread, like a meal, and everybody would come in one of the bars, in the back of the bars. They have cook a dinner or maybe a hotel or something like that there.
yeah.
Me with him, and I was 17 years old. And here I am hanging out, sitting at the table, having dinner. His father was there. All these other wise guys were there. People from the neighborhood who, a lot of people respected. And I thought it was like, wow, look
Yeah.
look where I am right now. You know what I mean? Hanging out
Yeah,
with these
good
guys,
times.
and a lot of them took a liking to me, so I got along with them, and then from there I started graduating. But my first thing that happened, and now me and Anthony and the little crew that we have, we would start going into bars and hanging out in bars. And of course, when you're hanging out in the bar, there's fights are gonna start because you're drunk, they're drunk, whatever's gonna go on, and
That's
that
right.
happened quite a few times. But there's one time. There was a fight in the bar, and well, actually, the fight was outside the bar, and somebody got killed. And me and my friend Little Joe was wanted for that killing. And
Uh-huh.
Anthony's father took control of the situation and hit us out for about a year and a half, close to 2 years. Little Joe got pinched because he started hanging out back in Queens, and me, I got pinched for possession of a weapon, and I had phony ID at the time,
Hmm.
and I got locked up, but they didn't know who I was. They thought I was John Rosado, and I got out on bail. And then when I went back to court the second time, detectives were swarming all over me, and they were locking me up for a murder that I really didn't commit, a shooting. And I'm thinking in my head, okay, they locked me up for a guy that got shot, but the guy that I was wanted for got stabbed. So I didn't understand what was going on. And then finally, well, long story short, in February 1975, I was 20 years old. I got arrested for two murders and possession of a weapon.
Wow.
That was my first arrest as an adult.
Did you have to do time on that one too, or no?
Excuse me. I got sent. Well, it was kind of. I had this attorney that I'm going to tell you something. He was amazing. Actually, he became a judge later on in life, but he was just amazing how he orchestrated everything and worked everything out. I went on trial for the one that I didn't commit.
Right.
I went on trial for five eyewitnesses against me, and I beat the case because I really
Wow.
didn't commit the crime. So, and
Wow. Good for you.
but because of that, all these guys now seeing here's a 20-year-old kid went to jail for murders, kept his mouth quiet,
Yep.
laid off on bail until he got bail. In other words, they did everything that I was taught in that lifestyle to do.
That's
And
right.
then when I did finally beat that murder case, I was brought all over the neighborhood and Mulberry Street and all that there as like the up and coming star in that fam. That was kind of like now accepted. A stand up guy, tough kid, not afraid to kill and stuff like that. And I guess that's just how I'm thinking everybody was thinking of me. The problem with that today is I had to meet their expectations of me.
Well, that's always the way it is. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
now I'm parading around like this guy. Now I have to start being this guy that they made me, more or less.
Well,
I
yeah.
was in my DNA at that point in time too. So, but that
Yeah.
would be the first one that kind of got me the clout, and then everybody started looking to me and respecting me because of that as a young kid.
Well, it seems like you hung around still for a while. I guess you must have met up to some of their expectations because you were an associate pretty much, right? For a while.
Oh yeah, for quite a while I was an associate and really climbing the ladder really quick. I was Nicky's right hand man for a period of time. I would drive him around. Matter of fact, it's his car that I got locked up with, and that's why he sent me back to court under John Rosado, saying let's just get the car out and then you don't have to go to court no more. But that didn't work out too good. So, but anyway,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, I was paraded around, hanging out on Mulberry Street, with all the big guys. I don't like using names, but I guess for your audience to understand, we're talking about Neil Delagrosse, Charlie West, Mike Talley. I mean, all these captains and
Yep.
underbosses and they all loved me. I just hung out with them, and they gave me the respect, and of course I gave them respect. And I knew that there's one thing when you're around those type of people, you keep your mouth shut and you just
Yep.
listen.
Well, they do have a way of making you feel pretty good too, right? I mean, giving you, being around these kinds of guys and giving you that leg up, showing that, you're all able to stand on your own, and it makes you feel pretty good.
Yeah, I think I became a legend in my own mind.
So so now you went away again another time then, right?
I went away for quite a few times. I was in and out a lot of times. Either I say it this way: from 1975 to 1999, I was incarcerated, waiting for cases, running away from cases,
Mhm.
whatever. That was my life for that period of time. But things did change in '97, and when I finally did get released in '99, my life started a different path. But that was kind of like the life that you lived.
Were you in the Eastern District?
I was in the Eastern District.
Yeah, that's why I didn't see you in the Southern District, because I probably would have caught wind of you there too. Because I was in MDC, MCC, I was in all those places too.
Okay. Well,
So
MCC I was in a couple of times, and
yep,
MDC I was only in once.
yeah. So was I. I was there, did 15 months in the box there. So now, when did you decide to turn your life around? And because I mean, I know I want to get into the ministry that you have and everything like that, but when was it that really hit you where you said, "I'm done with this life and all of this stuff"?
Well, we would have to go back a little bit before that there because
Sure.
I got involved with the drug business.
Okay.
Then the drug business got involved with my business.
Ah, okay.
I became addicted to cocaine. Of course, it was social for a period of time. Just
Hmm.
hanging out and drinking, going out to the disco areas, and you did a little coke here and there. The kind of like the Superfly. I don't know if you ever remember that movie, Superfly.
Sure,
Back
I do. Sure, I do.
and that was kind of like the cool thing to do. And then
Yeah.
I started getting really bad on the coke, where I was staying up for days at a time. Not
Oh,
going home
that's bad. Yeah.
from one bar to an after hours, you name it, and that's how it was. And then somebody introduced me to freebasing cocaine.
Ooh.
Okay,
Okay.
but for that period of time, now I freebase with this guy that knew how to do it, and I get high a little bit, but then it didn't really affect me when I needed more of it, and I would go home.
Hmm.
And I said, okay, this is probably better for me than the coke, because the coke was really bringing me down, and this wasn't. And that lasted for a little bit, and then of
Wow.
course it consumed me, and then I started losing everything. Everything I'm talking about, everything, respect, everything, because it really consumed me. And then crack cocaine came around, which was the
Right.
cheapest you could possibly get. And since I
Right.
was losing everything, losing ways of making money, and just my reputation, everything was going down the toilet. I got addicted to crack cocaine, and in 1996, I was completely homeless, living in the street.
Wow.
Yes,
Wow. So it really got you then.
yes,
Yeah. A
yes.
lot of people don't realize how bad that could be.
Oh man, yeah, and I remember being in a rehab in '93. My girlfriend was going to give birth to my daughter, and I asked them to let me out to go there being birth, and they kind of friends of ours. We knew people in that kind of business, and they let me out, and they said, okay, just stay out and take care of your daughter. You look like you're doing well, and when my daughter was born, I cried like a baby.
Hmm.
You know, I really felt that, okay, now I have another responsibility, somebody else to love other than myself, because I was totally infatuated with
Hmm.
myself.
Hmm.
So self-centered that I did whatever I pleased and didn't think of the consequences of how it was affecting anybody else around me.
Sure.
So when she was born, and 7 weeks after she's home, I have an argument with her mother, and I think, okay, what, I'm just gonna get high, and then I'll come back home. And the old saying, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but one is too many, 1,000's never enough, and
Oh
that
yeah.
played out. That one got me and consumed me, and I didn't go back home. And then after a while, my daughter's mother thought it'd be best that I just stay out and not come back home. So
Wow.
that was the pit of my downfall, and then trying to clean up my act so many times, going into rehabs, moving to Florida, and getting myself back. In '94, I moved to Florida. Nikki and them came down to Florida, sent for me. I started doing some things for them. And then before you know it, in '95, I'm back on crack cocaine. And then my mom, after a while, said, you can't stay here no more. I
Wow.
was bring a lot of heartache to my mom. And I was supposed to go back in '96 to go to a rehab.
Hmm.
And I met friends instead and started getting high again. And then eventually that's what happened. I didn't have a place to live and just lived in the streets of Brooklyn in '96.
How long have you been clean now?
Since '97.
Wow. Good for you.
Yeah,
Good for
yeah.
you.
Yeah, and what happened is when I was in Florida doing things with Nikki, there was somebody that was wired up that we were doing business with. So an indictment came down. And a little bit before that, I got locked up while I was in Brooklyn in '96 for selling crack to an undercover agent, which I really didn't sell it to him. I was cop for him. So this way he would get a little and I would get a little. That's how I was kind of keeping myself high, copping for
Right.
people like that. And I had a case there, and they bailed me out. And I was
Wow.
surprised it was a drug case.
Yeah.
But once I found the feds were looking for me, I didn't go back to court for that case. Long story short, 1997, I fell out. It was January 23rd, 1997. I fell out by somebody's apartment. Because the only time I ever slept was when I blacked out.
Wow.
To stay up for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, getting high, I did. And then if I passed out, that's just how I was. And sometimes it was in the streets, to be honest with you. And
Yeah.
I passed out. Guy, somebody must have gave information to the warrant officers where I was. So I get a tap on my foot, and I wake up, startle a little bit, and I see two guns, and let me know that I was under arrest. Today I call them my angels. Back then I called them my warrant
Yeah. Well,
officers.
of course.
But that was the last time I had a drink and a drug. Was January 23rd, 1997,
Wow. That's excellent. So
and then
now,
I was brought to Rikers Island.
oh, right. Yeah, another nice place.
Yeah,
What,
yeah.
so now what made you turn to become a minister?
Well, that's I want to give you the whole thing if you
Yep.
don't mind. I know you
No,
want to
no.
get. I want to get to that too, to be honest with you, because that's what I do today. But in 1997, I'm locked up in Rikers Island, and my experience of being locked up and waiting for bails, which I knew I wasn't getting a bail because I already was on the lam for jumping bail.
Right.
Uh, Two things I know to do: you got to get a good attorney to get yourself out of the mess you got yourself into. But you got to remember, I was a crackhead with no money,
Right.
so now I have to try to raise money for me. And then I need to get commissary money so I can live as comfortable as I possibly can while I'm incarcerated.
Yep.
So I call up a lot of people, my family, a lot of people, saying, hopefully, there's a couple of favors I did for somebody. And in spite of me being a crackhead, they might want to help me out a little bit, but nobody wanted to help me out
No.
either way. And my daughter's mom was allowing me to talk to my daughter over the phone. And I remember calling up some girl and asking for help, and she said, "Go read your Bible." And of course, I'm looking for an attorney. I'm looking for money. I'm not going to find it in the Bible, so I just figured it's a brush off. But this one time, my daughter's calling me. I'm talking to my daughter over the phone. She started calling me. I'm calling her, and she was crying. And I said, "Brianna, why are you crying?" She said, "Why don't you come and see me?" And it just shattered my heart because there were so many times, whether the mom would have let me see her or not, but there were so many times that I could have possibly tried to see her, but I'd rather get high than visit my own daughter.
Wow.
And all that reality came and just crushed my spirit at that point in time, broke my heart. Started crying. I didn't want the inmates to see me crying. I slammed down the phone, ran back to my cell, and just, I knew about God, but I didn't know God, and there's a big difference in that.
Hmm.
And I just said, God, if you're really to have somebody kill me or change me, I can't live with this pain anymore. And
Hmm.
actually, I thought that was kind of the best option for me at that point. I just didn't want to live the way I was living anymore. The pain was that great. And the reality of the shame, the guilt, and all the things that I did getting high bothered me more than the things I did when I was a gangster, so to speak, at
Wow.
that point in my life. And I believe that at that point in time, I just kept crying, God, please help me. God, please help me. And I truly believe that God answered the sincerity of the cry of my heart, even though I didn't know a lot about him at that point in time. And then I started reading the Bible.
He gave you some grace, and then to help you get to the Bible. Wow.
Yes.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
you go. Okay. I like that.
Yeah. And then the government was bothering my mom while these cases were going on. She was in Florida, and then I had that case in Florida. And I told my mom, give me his phone number, and she gave me the phone number. And then I called them up, and they said, if you help us, we'll help you. We could possibly get you into the witness protection program because they can't guarantee any of that because it's
No.
not run by the FBI.
Right.
And you could maybe start your life all over again. And to me, it was either death or start life all over again. I thought that was my best option. So
Hmm.
I will cooperate. And that's how it started from there.
So when you cooperated, how did you feel about those guys that you started talking to with the cooperation and everything? They treated you well?
You talking about the FBI?
Yes.
Yeah, they did. Of course, they take a course in psychology, so just to let you know,
Yeah. Well,
they
that's
know
right.
how to make you feel good and stuff like that. But I developed a really good relationship with the ones from New York more than the ones from Florida
Hmm.
later on. So yeah, so they treated me good. But now you would think, and this is in my mind, okay, I got God on my side. I'm collaborating with the government. My life will get a little bit easier. My time will get a little bit easier. And the first thing they do is when the government takes me, they put me in Dade County Jail in segregation. So I'm locked up for 23 hours a day. But I have a TV in the room,
Oh, that's
and
good.
and I have my Bible,
Yep.
and all I'm doing is watching the evangel. I just what happened, and I can't. There's no way I could describe it, but this is how I look at it today. Is I felt I'm not saying people didn't love me. I'm not saying my mom or my family didn't love me, but when everybody was turning their back on me, thinking I was better off in prison than out in the streets at that point in time, when I was in Rikers Island, I didn't feel anybody's love. I didn't feel like anybody really cared for me. I'm not saying that's true in
Right.
their eyes. For me, that's how I felt. I'm
Sure.
being abandoned. So when I started reading God's word and I seen how much He loved me, in spite of all the things that I did,
Yeah.
I just got a bigger hunger and thirst for Jesus.
Yeah.
So everything I was doing from that point in time is I need to know more about this Jesus that gave His life for me. And it hasn't stopped since that point in time,
Well,
to be
that's why
honest.
sometimes you need that isolation. It's almost like back in the days when they used to banish you. That was actually worse than killing you because you're still alive, and now you feel the separation between family, friends, your environment you grew up in, that kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. I know
Yeah,
that.
it was just something. And look, that's how I still live today. So it's amazing though how God worked everything out because now I'm locked up, but I have a TV and I can watch all the. I didn't watch anything but evangelism. That's all I don't want to have nothing to do. And the only thing I ever read was the Bible. I didn't want newspapers. I didn't want any of that stuff. I just wanted to know more about this Jesus Christ that loved me, gave His life for me. And then so now people find out where I am. The wise guys find out where I am in Florida, what jail I'm in.
Oh, really? Okay.
They have to move me. And it's not comfortable getting moved
No.
from one jail to another because now you have to, well, even though I was isolated from everybody, but I was more comfortable just where I was. And so they bring me to Indian River County Jail, and they have 2 Bible studies there a week.
Wow. Okay.
Everything that was happening was God answering the desire of my heart at that point in time to get to know Him more. And He was just bringing me places that I had no control over. So I really see the Spirit of God working in my life and through my life.
Well, that's what they say. It's always hard for us to let let go of the control. And you know what I
Right.
mean? You got, what is it? Let go, let God, or whatever, or something like that.
My God. Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
exactly. So now you started when you came home and everything like that. Is that when you started the ministry part, or how did that work out for you?
Well, first I had to finish doing my time. I was brought to Sandstone, Minnesota, and then in
Okay.
Sandstone, Minnesota, I started getting involved with a college called Set Free Prison Ministries, just a biblical college. And I would get books and stuff like that and take tests and stuff like that. So then, after my time is up, not the feds, but the marshals pick you up and then they bring you someplace. And that's another story we could share about that another time. I'll tell you how I got my new name. But anyway,
Yeah.
the time. And then I was sent what I believe God was giving me a taste of Abraham. He was sending me into a foreign land. Because after I finished with them, they sent me to San Antonio, Texas.
Wow. That's
And
wild.
that's where I went, yes. And then I had to lay up for a while and wait for them to get me all the ID and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So,
But you have a ministry now and everything, right? You're doing
yeah, it actually started in San Antonio.
okay.
My mom had passed away, and since I was in the witness protection program, nobody could notify me. They're not supposed to know where I am. They didn't know where I was.
Right.
And I didn't find out until 3 days after my mom passed away that she had passed away. And then because I was in the program, I couldn't go to a funeral. So it kind of broke my heart because if anybody needed this new love that God has placed in my heart, would have been my mom. My father had already passed away.
Were you able to was she able to talk to you and you were able to still communicate and she knew you turned
Well,
your
I
life
was in
around?
prison. Well, I was in prison, yes.
Good.
But then she got really sick with lung cancer, and if I called her and connected with her through the marshals, there was a couple of times when she just couldn't talk anymore. She was getting that weak. And then once I found, so once again, I'm just crying out to God. Okay, man, I don't understand this. I was always praying for my mom to be healed.
Right.
So I could spend some time with her after all this passes through. But anyway, so I started nursing home ministry, started giving that love into nursing. So I did nursing home ministry
Okay.
3 years in San Antonio, and then another 10 years in Dallas, Texas.
Wow. Well,
That was my first ministry.
wow. Yeah. Listen, and like I said, want to say my condolences about your mom. It's when you lose your mother, it's always that kind of big loss. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. So now you got the ministries going, and you're doing it. Are you doing it online too? Anything online about?
Oh yeah, we're on YouTube, really
Okay.
big now. Started that I think was this year or maybe in the beginning of December. I'm not sure. I was never into a lot of that stuff, and I don't even know how all that stuff works, to be honest with you.
Right.
But there was a lot of people telling me you need to get your story out there, let people know, bring a message of hope. So I did evangelism, speaking, going places to rehabs, celebrate recoveries, trying to help those that are
Read it.
under the addiction and let them know it's never too late for a new beginning. It's kind of like my motto that I tell them that you don't have to stay where you are. Trying to tell them a shortcut out of the misery is accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. And then we started doing the YouTube stuff. So we're on YouTube, we're
Good.
on TikTok. Yeah.
We're going to make sure that you get a couple of shouts out from the Goodfellow Podcast, absolutely. But just one, I want to just ask a question. What's one piece of advice you would give to someone out there that's watching, who might need to hear it right now today?
Well, this is my advice. Jesus loves them.
Mm-hmm.
He loves them enough that in Romans chapter 5, verse 8, he says that while we were still his enemies or still sinners, Christ died for us.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I can tell you through my past, I put my life on the line for my friends,
Mm-hmm.
but I never would do it for my enemy.
Mm-hmm.
But yet Christ did it for me while I was still in enemy with him, a sinner. Not that I'm not anymore, but
Yeah.
that I would tell people to no matter where they are, no matter what they're stuck in, no matter what circumstance that they may be in, no matter how devastating, no matter what their past is like, no matter what they see their future like, it's never too late for a new beginning. My new beginning started on my hands and knees in that prison cell, crying out to God for his help, and he has not failed me since.
Wow. Thank you,
So,
Robert, for that. Yeah, I appreciate that. I hope somebody that needed to hear that will definitely hear that. Is there anything else you'd like to add or anything like that?
well, trying to think the right way to say this here for the people to hear. You mentioned something that there's something about us that we feel like we need to be in control.
Right.
You know, control our circumstances, control whatever's going wrong. You know, we have to be the ones to try to fix it, man. And if you hear my story, I couldn't fix anything on my own.
Mhm.
It's only when I surrender my life to Christ and allow Him to come and live in me and live through me through my born again experience, accepting Him as my Lord and Savior,
Mhm.
that the inside changed. And when the inside changes, the outside automatically changes.
Wow, that's a good. That's not. Yeah, that's actually excellent. Well, Robert, I can't thank you enough for coming on. I appreciate your story. It was definitely worth listening to. I also want to hear some of the ministry. So, all my fans out there, Robert Borelli Ministries on the YouTube and stuff like that. And we will definitely keep on shouting it out here on the Goodfellow Podcast. And with that, God bless you.
Well, thank you. Could you just let your audience know that there is a book out there called The Witness
Oh, yes,
that
absolutely.
I co-authored? And if they go to robertburley.com, my website, and they make a donation, because that's how we keep this ministry going, is through people donating to our ministry.
Okay.
So continue to what we're doing. And then I would send them a book personally, autograph it if that's what they want, and put scripture in there for them.
I will
So,
definitely do that. We will mention that on the Goodfellow podcast. For absolutely, we really appreciate that, and I think it's a good thing to do. My friend Charlie Buono has a book from crime to Christ, so he, yeah, so he
okay.
did, yeah. So, but thanks you, Robert. Listen, God bless you. Thanks again for coming on. I really appreciate it. This was a great episode, and I wish you all the best.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate what you guys are doing also. God bless
Thank you
you.
so much.
All right. Thank you.
Take
Bye.
care.